With SMS, it's pretty much as soon as you've kind of hit yes, send it to my phone, your phone pings and it's there. And you've got that code, you put it in, you've made that transaction. So it's become a really, really trusted channel.
It's time for CX education. Welcome to the podcast for enterprise CX professionals, the people who want to connect with customers on their own terms, before, during, and after a purchase is made. In each episode, you'll learn how to create experiences your customers love. Ready? Here we go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of CX Education. I'm Sunny Dhami, and this episode is brought to you by Sinch, a platform that helps businesses create mobile experiences customers love by connecting them with audiences on their own terms, when, where, and how they want. Today, I'm very privileged to welcome our guest, Nick from Mobilesquared. Nick, thanks for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Great to be here.
Good. Well, without further ado, Nick, it'd be great if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce your background and why we're here today speaking with you.
Okay, thanks. Well, I am founder and chief insight analyst at Mobilesquared. Mobilesquared's been going for 15 years. It started out as a research analytical company covering all things mobile. Used to specialize a lot in mobile advertising, mobile marketing, which has obviously kind of morphed its way into A2P SMS these days. So over the last 10 years or so, we've specialized in messaging. So we first focused our attention on A2P SMS, and obviously on the back of that, we then started looking at RCS, WhatsApp. So we've got a lot of data, hell of a lot of data on all of those areas. We're now adding that. So we've got good view on Viber, on Apple Messages for Business, for Facebook Messenger, and on top of that, we now cover all things CPaaS as well. So in terms of how we position those and how we kind of present that to our clients, we have a portal that has about 76 million data points in it, and we now refer to that as the Messageverse. So, lots of companies will often say that they offer omnichannel and it's omni messaging. Metaverse picked off, it's even penetrated Hollywood and Spider-Man these days. We're not trying to do the same with Messageverse, but it's the same concept. It's broadly covering all the various messaging channels and platforms that are communicating the brand with the consumer.
So you said there you've been in business for just over 15 years, and you touched on a number of interesting points there. The fact that you went from mobile marketing, which you then touched on, is now sort of A2P SMS, and then you've also touched on a number of new channels that are coming into the space, all the way through to the Messageverse. So there's a whole host of changes you talked about there. Do you think the way you and the business adapted has been very in line with the way the industry has changed their approach to leveraging messaging and leveraging mobile marketing?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that there were a lot of very, should we say, elaborate forecasts looking at A2P SMS up to around 2014. So we were using other clients, we're doing research projects for clients, writing white papers, looking at the opportunity of A2P SMS, looking at elements of A2P SMS that could potentially challenge its growth. And we're always using other research companies' forecasts because we didn't have any forecasts ourselves, but none of the data added up. So you talk to people and they tell you what the traffic or total traffic is. They talk about average cost per message, and you put it together and you've got a figure. And yet you look at the market revenues and they were 15 times greater. And then you try and get the industry to kind of justify their thinking around this and kind of, well, how did these companies arrive at these numbers? We're just going off on tangents, going down kind of cul-de-sac with companies as they try to explain what these figures were. So we started talking to the industry. We always have good connections, and since then we've got brilliant connections throughout the whole kind of the messaging ecosystem. And we just gradually spoke to more and more people, got more data. We put our first ever forecast out for SMS. I think it's about 2014. We've updated them every year ever since. So now we speak to hundreds and hundreds of companies to get their input, their data, their insight. So we make sure that with all of our forecasts, we try and take the data to a more granular level each year. So, so it's more a case of we're trying to reflect where the industry is and where it's going. So, right now there's obviously a lot of looking at a lot of issues have arisen around looking at kind of the rise of grey routes. Why is that happening? The impact of price hikes on messages. What does that mean? So we're now looking at the impact that has on the industry and what it could mean from a brand perspective, and just try to understand that and then relay that back to the industry. Yeah, and also, there are certain practices happening where we can model it and we will then present it to the industry and actually say, if you do this, you're going to damage the industry long term. And I think what we've changed the view of for industry is that people have always said that A2P SMS is going to die. It's peaked and it's on its way down. Our view has always been it hasn't started yet. And we still have that. We still think this is a platform, but we're only at the tip of the iceberg. And that is, so what is happening now, and it is largely because of the pandemic and the way brands have started to think about how they engage with their consumers, and also mainly the digital journey and transformation that they've undergone in that time, has really kind of brought them to realize that actually messaging, SMS result is not sexy, but in terms of effectiveness, there's nothing close to it. So in terms of getting that message to the consumer, there's no better channel. So, we're starting to see other rich channels emerging so that, they're putting additional layers onto kind of what you can do with SMS. But right now, the focus we really think is growing SMS and penetrating the 90% or so of businesses that don't actually use SMS globally.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. I mean, from a Sinch perspective, we obviously work very heavily with SMS and messaging. And I think you're spot on there in terms of analysts have said for many a year that SMS use and growth is slowing down and it's going to slow down. But actually, when you get to the year they say that it's going to slow down by, it's actually increased year on year, and that continues to happen. An interesting thing I was reading the other day was actually the number of businesses that are leveraging SMS as a marketing tool right now is significantly low, considering the opportunity we've got. And I think that really aligns with your note there that sort of true SMS marketing and messaging is yet to actually kick off and get further ahead of where it could be. And yeah, I agree with you in terms of the actual reach of SMS is phenomenal. And the fact that if you look around in your day-to-day life, you are using SMS for everything, whether it's a notification of where your pizza is, a notification of your bank login or an email login, whether it's an update on an order. SMS is used everywhere, and it's continuing to grow. And I think it's super interesting that you guys are seeing that. Do you feel on the last few years, obviously we've gone through a pandemic, we've changed the way we work, changed the way we live. Do you think that reignited SMS, or that growth was continuing to happen and you just expected it to go forth?
No, I think it reignited it, to be honest, because I think it's kind of a lot of businesses were using it. I say not many, in fact, but those that were using it were starting to understand what it is and how they can use it. Because I think there's so much pressure. If you look at, kind of the marketing mix from a brand's perspective in terms of what channels do they use. Yeah, and if it's a big brand and you work with an agency guys are actually thinking, well, I want to get this is a great campaign. I'm going to get awards for this. I'm going to get Cannes Lions. Brilliant. This is, it means a lot to that agency, that individual to be part of a winning campaign. What can you win with SMS? You can't. The best thing you can probably get from SMS, over the last 5-6 years or so, was probably a good discount on Domino's, because that was the use case that everyone was referring to. You go back 10, 14 years or however many, and the use case then was winter tires from BMW in Germany, because obviously there is regulation that when winter comes, a certain time of year, you have to put your winter tires on. So they obviously did a campaign. They have got massive ROI on the back of it, because they're only spending, well, I don't know what the rate was back then for Germany, but it's still quite high now. But, considering the fact that people then go to buy 4 winter tires, the ROI I know is absolutely astronomical. So, but the good thing is with SMS, there's so much activity on it, but there's use case galore that people can refer to and keep referring to, and that builds up momentum among other brands. So then brands will start to say, well, we're not really using this, we're using email or and just voice, for example, and we should start to use messaging. And, start with SMS. It's simple to use. It's simple to as kind of the onboarding process. And away you go. It's really easy. And all you have to do is come up with, I guess, 140 characters, because I guess you need to have your opt-out within that. But from a browser perspective, it's so simple to use.
Yeah. Simple to use, super effective, and gets results. As you mentioned there, BMW saw an ROI, and there's a number of case studies out there where you can see an immediate ROI just because of the reach, right? If you're able to reach every mobile on the planet through an SMS, it's super effective. But you touched on an interesting point there. It's not very sexy. So in terms of messaging and the ability to turn some of that marketing or comms a little bit sexier, where would you go, and what are you seeing as the sort of trends moving forward?
I think it's still trying to understand what the engagement is and how to engage with people with, when you're only up a few characters. Because right now, the big thing really within SMS is one-time passwords. That's really, it's really effective. And there's so much security around any kind of purchase, any kind of activity online that, it's creating, I'd say it's increasing the level of trust that people have in the channel. Because part of the issue that you have is if you do a transaction, says right to kind of confirm this transaction, confirm it's you, we can email you, you can send a message, etc., etc. The chances are, if you send an email, you could be waiting for hours, sometimes days, to get that confirmation to then complete that transaction. It's a really frustrating process. With SMS, it's pretty much as soon as you've kind of hit yes, send it to my phone, your phone pings and it's there, and you've got that code, you put it in, you've made that transaction. So it's become a really, really trusted channel, even more so, because I think also the other thing that's a really key point to mention is that the way that we view our mobile phones has changed. Because if you go back to the way that the industry used to talk about engagement and how people use their phones, the mobile number was a really personal thing. The mobile device was a really personal device, and it had all your photos on there. It had your bank details, your access to your accounts, and so on and so forth. And people were really protective of that. Actually, now it's the means to controlling your life. You can buy rail tickets, you can plan things, you can do things, you can watch things, you can pretty much run your life with your mobile phone. So all of a sudden, it's kind of an identifier. It's part of you. It's part of your identity. And that's really what brands have to tap into. Now, in terms of where we go with brand activity, they are typically always going to follow where, people spend their time. And right now, people spend their time messaging. So messaging is going to be the next big channel after social media in terms of where brands spend their money. Right now, there still needs to be a catalyst. So SMS is the foundation for that. But the real big money will come when rich messaging takes off. So that is the likes of RCS, WhatsApp, Viber, etc. And when that happens, there's absolutely no reason why, there shouldn't be a hockey stick growth curve in spend that we've seen in lots of other industries. Because if you look at it right now, for example, the analyzed ARPU for SMS is about $3. I think it's about $4 over. But if you look at the annualized ARPU for mobile advertising just on smartphones per year, that figure's about $46. So other industries, so look at kind of what the App Store's generating. The figures have just come out. It's astronomical what people are spending on their apps. Apple is obviously users are spending twice as much as Android users, but aside from that point, they are spending billions. So billion-dollar industries have emerged on smartphones. So there's absolutely no reason why messaging isn't the next industry to kind of capitalize on that. We genuinely think that will happen. It's just a case of when, and there will need some kind of catalyst or trigger that will suddenly go, rate the brands or their agencies, just go, that is why we need this. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think there's probably a number of key things that need to happen, but it will happen. It's just a case of when.
And for our listeners that may not be too well versed with the messaging world, when you talk about rich messaging, can you just explain for them what the key difference is from rich messaging to a traditional SMS?
Yeah, sure. So rich messaging is more intriguing, more immersive content. So I guess the simple way of looking at it is right now, typically you send an SMS, but if you put a picture on it, it becomes an MMS. So you have an image on there, and that is rich content. So rich messaging is taking it to the next level, whereby you're more engaged in that platform. So, for example, right now there's about 2.6 billion or so WhatsApp users globally. That is a rich engagement platform for people to communicate. And again, brands starting to come into that as a way of communicating with consumers. So, you can just do a basic chat on WhatsApp, but you can do video, you can send them pictures, you can send them, if you're a restaurant, you can send them the menu. You can do that either as a kind of one big kind of rich card, big image, like kind of a super MMS, or you could do it as a carousel, and all of a sudden, all the brand is doing is kind of just reusing content. It's not that it has to generate new content. This is, I think, part of the problem that mobile always has to go through until it realizes actually we can just repurpose existing content. So it could just break down whatever it's done with an app or a website and just start using that content in smaller chunks, but on the mobile phone within a rich messaging environment. So that could be WhatsApp, it could be Viber, it could be RCS, obviously. And then that's the thing. You go back 15 years or so, when all of a sudden smartphones were around, or you go back a step further, you had the Nokia, I think the N95, and that is going back quite a while, to be honest. And all of a sudden you're talking about mobizones, you're talking about fresh content, fresh little video, like 2 or 3 minute video clips of your favorite TV programs based on those. The one I remember was 24 with Jack Bauer. But Kiefer Sutherland was Jack Bauer. But in the mobizone version of 24, you had a different person playing Jack Bauer. That isn't Jack Bauer. That's what people want. So it took a long time for actual people to think that we need to do something fresh and new because it's mobile, but you don't. And the same will apply with messaging and content. And then gradually that rich content that's already out there will filter into messaging. And then people and brands will realize just how powerful messaging actually is.
So I think that really powers into customer experience, really, because you mentioned there people are spending a lot of their time on their mobile devices now. So social apps and messaging apps are the two most popular types of applications people are using. So rich messaging gives businesses and people trying to use messaging as a way to communicate with their customers, a way to keep them engaged, and a way to show them, as you said, some rich content, which relatively could be something they've already created. But what we're also seeing is a lot more down the route of personalization as well. So it's making that experience personalized to either you as an individual, or you as a group, or you as a customer. And I think one thing that I'd love to talk to you about, considering you've got a lot of the research and a lot of the background, how important do you feel regional elements are to the uptake of rich messaging and of leveraging a lot of these channels? How are you seeing that change across regions?
That's better. So, as an industry, we've been talking about RCS for years and years and years. And potentially it helps the global reach because in theory, it can go on every Android device. So however many billions there are, we do have that data, but I can't remember that number off the top of my head. It's a lot. Potentially the same with Apple. You've got over 1 billion unique mobile users or iPhone users. So, potentially you've got an audience of 1 billion. So, and then to break that down is great. On SMS, you've got about 5.5 billion unique mobile users. You've got theory a global reach, but that's not always the user's preferred channel. So again, around as you go around the regions, there are pockets of activity on rich messaging channels that are the preferred channels. So a lot of kind of the Baltics and CIS region, you've got Viber, parts of Asia, you've got WeChat, obviously the kind of celebrated platform, not just messaging, but the platform in China. You've got Line in Japan, you've got KakaoTalk in South Korea. And, and that's not to say that there won't be other OTT messaging platforms, even operator platforms emerging that will take off. That's then a case of how do you then kind of monetize that through messaging, and how do businesses use that? Because, I think as an industry, but we've talked about scale, and I think, we've kind of got to stop doing that. I think we're applying a kind of a telco mobile almost legacy to what is a digital channel. So we should be thinking digitally with this. It's not that developers thought in the same way that a mobile or a telco think, we wouldn't have any of these channels, because they're just saying, well, we'll launch it, we won't have 1 billion people, so what's the point? But they grow. And if they take off and if people like it, it will grow. And that's what should happen with any channel. That's what should have happened really with RCS. RCS always, it's always positioned as you can only really use it as a brand if every operator has launched RCS. And you kind of, well, that's in hindsight, if you're an operator that's launched RCS and you're waiting for another 2 or 3 operators to catch up and roll out their RCS platform, you're just there twiddling your thumb. Oh, we can't do anything with it. In hindsight, you should be furious. You should be saying, actually, get people on there, start using it. You didn't have WhatsApp saying, well, we won't do this just yet because we're not, we don't think we're quite ready for everyone. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It's your, get people on it. That's the view. You've got to start building that user base, but it's got to be active. I think the issue has been with thinking about creating a massive user base and then becoming active. But in actual fact, the digital way of growing an audience is get them active and then it will grow. I think that's what should have happened with something like RCS. Yeah. But again, it's starting to take off in certain countries. I think in Mexico and a couple of markets in Europe as well, in Germany, it's starting to take off. But again, it's a slow process because again, it's kind of almost re-educating brands into why they should use rich messaging, especially at a time when a lot of brands are now starting to see the value in SMS. So it's kind of that one, it's almost got to go step by step, because I think part of the issue that we're seeing from our side is that as an industry, we go to brands and we say, look, this is what you can do. And this is amazing. Here's a rich carousel and you can send that to everyone. Everyone potentially on RCS on an Android device in theory. But the brand says, we're only here. We're just sending one-way messages on SMS. And sometimes we might send an MMS. And yet we're making this huge leap. So it's not going to happen. Looking back at some of the presentations that we've given over the last 5 years or so around RCS and rich messaging, we often refer to the fact that what's happened with messaging, it's going from SMS to RCS, and potentially, if an operator just turned on RCS overnight, which could happen, back in the day, and it still potentially could, I guess. That, the way that we used to talk about that is that you're going from black and white TV to like 4K HD overnight. Okay, technology can do it, but then the content can't do it. And I think that's always the point we've missed. You've got to do step by step and understand from a brand perspective how it's going to work for you. So it is kind of smaller steps, small incremental steps to ultimately get where you need to be. And, it's not to say that in years to come, every brand won't be sending carousels via whatever channel works for them or works for their target consumer. But where we are right now, we're still kind of learning what this is. So it's a gradual process. And I think, it's a journey that the industry has been predicting, but the brands still need educating. And there's a lot of education to be done.
There are some great outliers to that point, though. So we've seen a lot of brands using both sort of RCS or WhatsApp or whatever it may be to their full advantage. So obviously ahead of the curve. And we're seeing a lot more of this, especially around sort of Asia and Latin America, where they've sort of gone far ahead and are actually leveraging the messaging channels for retail on those channels rather than going through app stores or shops or whatever that may be. So there are some great examples of how businesses and regions are really leveraging some of those channels already. So I think it'll be exciting to see when the rest of the world follows on suit, and we get the growth that you're expecting, anticipating, and that sort of trigger moment where we all start leveraging all of these channels and see a lot more rich messaging come to us. So
But I think we need brands to talk about it though. We need them
yeah,
to be brave enough to share data. Kind of say, "No, this is the campaign we've done." It's not as if one of their competitors going, "Right, we're going to run a better campaign. It's doing better than yours, and we're going to take all the money, etc., etc." It does. It's not going to work like that. It's a case of there's going to be such a big pie.
yeah,
If you think of what digital marketing generates annually now, I think $250 billion. So that's basically what rich messaging is going to tap into.
yeah,
So it's already there. It's just getting into it and making sure you get a slice, and gradually that slice becomes bigger. But you've got to talk. It's almost as if brands and aggregated industries, etc., the Sinches of this world, almost have to kind of come together and kind of, this is my view. I'm independent. I can say whatever I like. It's not that easy for you to say that. I get that. But, from our side, this is what it needs. It needs this steady flow of case studies of, this is what you're going to get. We did this, and look how great it is. Whereas, you do get a lot of brands who say, "Oh, this is great. Can't tell anyone. It's our little secret. And we'll keep beavering away and doing this." And, and eventually other people can kind of cotton on to what's happening, and off they go. But, we're at a stage where all we're going to get is massive growth at some point. So everyone's, I think, sort of being transparent, or as transparent as they can be, just to get brands really excited again, because the power of this is unprecedented compared to anything else. Rich messaging is going to kind of take that to the next level compared to what we already see on a consistent basis with SMS.
Yeah, I mean, luckily for us, we get to work with some very adventurous customers and very forward-thinking customers that go out and deliver this kind of stuff. So if you go on to our sort of customer stories, you can see the likes of Nissan, Zaddy and Voltaire, iFood in Latin America, who've done some really cool things on using rich messaging, but also showcasing those results. So they've sort of come out and shared the results they've got. They've shared the increased ROI, the increased engagement level, higher basket size, whatever that ROI metric may be. But we are consistently seeing those metrics be increased and improved by leveraging messaging as part of your marketing, customer care, whatever part of the customer journey is. Leveraging messaging within that really does seem to drive up your results depending on what you're looking for. So it is great to see brands and businesses taking that lead. What I would love to touch on is where you think, you obviously mentioned that you feel the market's going to grow and waiting for a moment where things will really all fall into place. What are your sort of predictions for where you feel the messaging market is going right now? And are there any key channels you feel will stand sort of head and shoulders above the others in the sort of coming years?
Okay. So, I mean, head and shoulders right now, I'm certainly going to look at spend, it's SMS. It's growing, it's continuing to grow. And compared to some of the other rich message channels, it's probably growing at a similar speed, at a similar rate. So that's the platform. But, that's not really the long-term future. It's great for now. It's probably going to be a solid foundation for maybe the next 5 years. But beyond that, gradually, we're going to see more and more rich messaging channels come to the fore and, really play a key role here as part of the marketing mix for a brand. What we're seeing now is WhatsApp is really starting to take off, but again, it's still slower than we expected. So, there's still, it's brands dipping their toe in the water, just trying to see how it works. That could also be because of WhatsApp's model. It started as an inbound kind of customer care platform to offset the voice call traffic into a contact center, which is itself is a massive, absolutely massive industry. So why would you not want to tap into that? Absolutely right. Yeah, it makes sense to do it that way, and then start to kind of bring that spend into mobile, into messaging. So that's the model that Apple have followed with Apple Messages for Business. WhatsApp, obviously, about a year ago, so over a year ago, changed and expanded its remit to then allow companies to use outbound messaging, so you can start to marketing, promote and promos to their, but again, they've got to have a WhatsApp opted-in database. You can't use a generic mobile one, which you can with SMS. So SMS still has advantages in that way, but I guess what they're trying to do is play gatekeeper still and just protect the community, which is a very sizable community that they've managed to kind of grow. So yeah, I understand why they're doing that, and it seems like a very secure platform. They're advertising everywhere. They're all over Facebook. They're all over TV with campaigns about how safe and secure WhatsApp is. So is that to a consumer, or is it they're trying to reach out to businesses? So maybe on the back of their activity right now, you'll start to see a lot more businesses really kind of put a lot more faith in WhatsApp. So that's really the driver here, WhatsApp. And we kind of think as WhatsApp grows, you can't contact everyone. There's always a fallback, or there's got to be an alternative if you want to kind of effectively achieve ubiquitous coverage within any market. So right now in the UK, I think WhatsApp has around, 40 million or so users. Again, we have to figure, but I don't have it off the top of my head, which means that you've got around 60 million or so unique mobile users. You can reach 2/3 of users in theory, but you can't reach a third. But then of that 2/3 WhatsApp users, they have to be opted in. So a lot of brands don't have a particularly massive opt-in for WhatsApp just yet. So that's something that, really needs to be addressed if they're going to, start to pump a lot more money into the channel as part of their marketing mix. But so that's one thing. But, key from a brand perspective, again, kind of touched on this already, but it's based on how we've positioned messaging over the last decade or so is having that ubiquity. So, okay, so if you want WhatsApp, you can maybe then also go with RCS. Potentially, I think by the end of this year, there will be about 20 million RCS users in the UK. There will be about 1.2 billion globally. Not all of those would be what we'd consider active in terms of willingly engage with a brand. It's probably around about 500-600 million, but again, it's still sizable, and you've got to put these things into context, because you look at the size of an RCS user base in a market, and the chances are it's still going to be significantly higher than the average readership of a newspaper or a magazine or the majority of TV channels. It's only if you can't say, well, look at the Super Bowl. It has an audience of 52 billion trillion people. So everyone throws all their money, marketing, advertising spend at that. But that's a one-off. That's a unique event in a calendar year. If you go on a daily basis, split things out by a minute and every day, in actual fact, if you just use RCS right now in any market where it's being offered for business messaging, it's going to have probably more reach than most of the channels. So that's kind of where we are. And again, it's that mindset thing. But we don't have to reach everyone all the time, because that's not how advertising works anyway, which is why people have, you advertise on Sky, BBC, on CNN, on whoever, on Star, or wherever you are, depending on where you are in the world. You've got different audiences that you're trying to reach. So again, it's kind of understanding that, but we think WhatsApp will drive things, and that will then kind of it will drag along the others for a while, and then they will start to flourish as well. So, 10 years time, the world we think will be very different, and it will be dominated by messaging.
Cool. That's good to hear. And now we've got that on record. We'll bring this back in 10 years time and have that reunion episode.
Mark this time and do it.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, at the very start of our conversation, you mentioned about the sort of future for yourselves and where that's going, and you mentioned a very interesting term, the Messageverse. So I'm intrigued as to what that is. Could you tell our listeners a little bit more? We'd love to know more.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're on about the Messageverse. So again, it's just a phrase that we coined when we basically got fed up when we started talking about channels. We talking, there's this channel, and then we then list about 8-10 messaging channels. We just kind of thought there's got to be a better way of saying it. So we just kind of thought verse. Everyone's been talking about as a service for the last 5-6 years, CPaaS, CCaaS, UCaaS, everything. Now it's verse, so we have the metaverse. Everyone's been talking about the metaverse. For us, anything that we do moving forward is all about the Messageverse, really. It's kind of, what is it? What does it mean? And how can people really kind of understand how they can use it? So, we're sitting on so many data points. I think it's about 76 million data points right now, which is ridiculous. It's so many. And within that, we look at all the different channels across 200 markets, and we then look at the traffic, we look at spend, we look at kind of the average message per user and so on and so forth. But we can start to do other stuff with it as well. That's where it gets really exciting. We've got consumer data. We know who's opted in for market verticals. We can break market vertical traffic down by use case. We can now take it in terms of who's going to click on an ad based on your age and gender and your location. So we're starting to get this level of detail in our data that doesn't just help a company plan its own business, can help sell to their own customers. So when you're talking to a car manufacturer or a retailer or a restaurant, we've got the data that actually shows this is potentially who will read your message, who will actually click on the message and start to find out more and go all the way through to kind of completing a transaction. That's really powerful. So, and we're looking to build on that just to make sure that ultimately, from our perspective as a company, we want to make sure that we are the go-to company for all things messaging and all things messaging data. And, we're probably adding a number of million data points each month. And so, so that is our Messageverse. So, we will be launching a new service very soon. I'm afraid I can't tell you just yet what it is, but we think it will fundamentally change how everyone views messaging and how they can access data to help them understand messaging. So it's going to be a really simple service that can get brands really excited about what it can mean for them.
Cool. That sounds super
But you have to
exciting.
watch the space, I'm afraid.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of data points there and a lot of insights that can be gained from having access to the Messageverse. And well, I'm going to be looking out to see what that next big announcement is, and hopefully it's another one of those big steps that gets us to the real fraction point of making messaging the biggest thing there is for businesses to use.
Absolutely, that's all right.
Cool. Well, I just want to really thank you, Nick, for spending that time with us and talking us through messaging and what's to come and where the world's going. I think it's been super insightful. You can definitely tell you've got a big passion for messaging and also some great background in what is to come and what's already been done. So thank you very much for your time.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Thank you. And to all our listeners, thanks for listening in. And we look forward to catching you on the next episode of CX Education. Thank you. Bye.
That's it for this episode of CX Education. Thanks for joining us. This show is brought to you by Sinch, the technology company that helps you create mobile experiences your customers love. Did you enjoy the episode? Then make sure to subscribe to CX Education wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or visit cinch.com/podcast to get instant access to all the latest episodes.